there, my name's Kirsten. This is the Paper Knits podcast, episode number 11. I'm a knitter in Edmonton, Alberta, and today I'm going to talk about what I've been working on the last few weeks. My last episode was all of the sweaters that I had knit in 2023, and I haven't filmed, and then I guess my one before that was all the things that I had knit for my daughter, and it's been a while since I've actually filmed the usual, where it's here's my FOs, here's my whips. So that's what we're going to do today. I've had a lot of started whips that were immediately abandoned, and a handful that are okay, this is actually a project I will finish. So yeah, I've got lots to share today and a couple stories and whatever. So yeah, here we go. Just to dive right in, I guess, I am wearing my most recent finished object. This was a sweater that I started in January of 2023. Finished it January of 2024. So in my last episode, I was talking about my frantic knitting of January and February last year, where I had lots of projects on the go, ran out of yarn a lot, started projects in the meantime while I was waiting for more yarn to come. This was one of the ones that I started in the meantime while I was waiting for yarn to come. And I'd actually forgotten about it when I filmed that other, my last episode, because I didn't finish it. It wasn't a finished object of last year. But I picked it back up again near the end of last year. I was trying to pick up some languishing whips and finish them. This is one that's been sitting in a bag on my shelf for lots of months. This is the Pixelated Cardigan by Knit Collage, and it's knit in their yarn. The chunky one is the Spun Cloud. And then the other one is called Wildflower, and it is cotton, just strips of cotton fabric. This is what the color work is done in. And then this is a giant ball of the Spun Cloud. It says it's 100% wool, but it's also plied with stellina, I want to say. Something like that, like a sparkle thread. And it's super chunky, super bulky. These are giant skeins of yarn. I will include a picture. And this was a kit that I bought on a D-stash. And so somebody local to me had bought the kit for the cardigan and was D-stashing it. And so I bought this years ago and bought it as kind of a this will be an opportunity for me to try knit collage for $100 because it's expensive. And yeah, so I bought this kit. I was really excited about it. It took me a while to actually do anything with it, but for some reason January last year was the time for me to do that. I'd cast it on, worked my way through the color work until the split for sleeves, and then was okay, I'm done for now. It was very slow going. It's very chunky wool, it's very chunky needles, and didn't enjoy the process of it at all. I'm so surprised that I got through the short rows and the color work. It was color work flat, which actually this is another time that I've done that before. I had said in some of my previous episodes that it's a new thing for me. This I had randomly done color work flat in. And yeah, it was not an enjoyable knit. Not sure, I'm not sure I really love the finished object. It is very warm. It's very comfortable. It was freezing cold here in the middle of January, and that's when I finished this. And so I wore it every day for 3 days before we took off on a vacation, but right after I finished it. But anyway, so I'm gonna stand up a little bit and show you the fit. I really like this angle of it, which seems kind of funny, but it's I like the boxiness of it. I like how it drapes in the back. I feel in my front it just adds volume that I don't want. It will not be my go-to everyday item. I'm proud of it, but it's not gonna be an everyday thing. The wool, it's basically roving plied with a sparkle thread, and so it doesn't wear super great. The cotton yarn frays immediately. I have it all over me already. It was messy to work with. It wasn't, yeah. I cannot sing high praises of these yarns. I kind of had FOMO, I think, about knit collage, and now I've worked with it and I am okay to not work with it again. I don't like chunky, I don't like that. It's like such a big gauge. I didn't swatch for this. I have no idea what my gauge was. And yeah, kind of like fudged my way through it. I think I used the largest needles that I owned, and I like wasn't gonna buy a size up. I did make a couple changes. The kit that I got from this person was for a larger size, and so that's part of why I knew I could kind of like fudge things a little bit, and just like try it on as I go, because there was extra yarn. And so I lengthened the sleeves. The original just has like a crochet edge around everything, and I added ribbing. And yeah, I knew I wanted like the longer sleeves with like such a big sweater. It's like I don't need a 3/4 length like chunky sweater. So I'm glad I did that. I had stolen an idea from another project that I saw on Ravelry with they held the cotton double at the top where you work short rows back and forth, and then once I got to the color work portion, then I held it single. And so I really liked how that kind of bulked up that section. It's like really noticeable the difference in gauge otherwise between the like single strand of the cotton yarn and then once you move into the color work. So I'm glad that I had seen that suggestion. I had found that like ages ago. If I can track down what project it was again, I'll link it. But anyways, it's fine. It's not my like most favorite knit that's ever existed before. I think the vibe of knit collage is cool, and how their like business practices work I think is cool. Probably not one for me to like use again. Just like not my style of projects, not my style of yarn, whatever, which is fine. But I have a finished cardigan. It cost me $100 because that's what I bought the kit for, off of somebody. Also got a bag. She had it in a loop London bag, and so I got that, which I like felt important to me, I think, just because that's like a big knit store that you hear about a lot. But yeah, okay. So in December I had like finished the like last of my kind of projects that I wanted to finish for the year, and I had a couple ideas of like what I wanted to cast on next, but I just was very aimless in my knitting. I cast on a bunch of things and then immediately put them aside. Some of them might get picked up again, some of them will not. And yeah, I just was like really uncertain about what I was going to knit next, which like doesn't happen to me very often. I usually have like a pretty solid plan. I've like bought yarn for certain projects. I know what it is that I want to knit next. Last year I had a lot of test knits, and so that those were like deadline knits that helped me kind of keep going, and then I like squeezed in like other ones that I was interested in between, like just of my own personal knits. And yeah, and then I like didn't have any of that. I didn't have any idea of what I want to cast on next. December was a lot of coping with life, my daughter's birthday, anniversary of her death, Christmas, like yeah, it was just a coping time. And so I had cast on a couple things and then was like, whoa, I do not have the brain energy for this. One of those was the Sweet Shop blanket by Laura Penrose. I have all of these scraps of sock yarn, and so it was like perfect, gonna use that up. And I had gone to my local yarn shop, bought a main color. I decided I wanted to do like a dark main color, and then I would hold a bunch of the sock yarns double. This one is like 6 different colors. I kind of tried to fade together. And so the initial square was just fine. Instructions were good. I go to like it's knit all together. So you like knit all of these little squares and then you like pick up and knit as you go. And so instead of seaming at the end, they just like build the whole thing as you go. And so I started doing the pickup, and like immediately my numbers were wrong. And then it like wasn't looking very good and the join was ugly. And it's kind of like, it reminded me of like when I have attempted to quilt something in the past. And so as I'm like making my quilt squares and like, they're just like all a little bit like, the points are just not lining up properly. And like, as you keep going, it just like gets worse and worse. And so I had another square built onto this and I ripped it all back. And this was like a couple days before my daughter's birthday. And I was like, you know what? No, this is not what I need right now. This was like, I was just like dragging my mind through mud trying to understand what I was supposed to be doing. And I was like, no, I'm trying to knit to like relax. This is not relaxing. So I promptly put this aside. This will be a long-term whip anyways. It's a blanket. I'm looking forward to like using up my scraps. And what this will turn into, I'm looking forward to. Just right then was not the time for it. So that was whip number 1 that I started and then promptly stopped. Whip number 2 was, just wait. Here's whip number 2. This is 1 inch worth of a Building Blocks Cardi by Amy Sher in Newtoden. And so I had planned for a long time that this was going to be my Christmas cast on. I ended up casting it on before then, which was good because I immediately, well not immediately because I did cast on the sweater, but very quickly I was like, I don't think this is going to be what I need either. I had, obviously Newtoden is like all the rage. I didn't understand what all the fuss was about. But one podcaster that I like was raving about it in like a very genuine way. And so her podcast is called Knit My Way Home. She's based in the Yukon and is very lovely. She is a very lovely podcast. It's very calming and beautiful. And so she uses Newtoden a lot. And so I watched one of her episodes and I was like, fine, I'm convinced. And happened to see that there was an update and ordered Newtoden in the middle of the night. Not because that's when the update was, just because that's when I was scrolling on Instagram and I was like, oh, an update. And I was like, bought it at 11:30 at night. So I bought a couple cakes of this. I think it's a natural color. I don't think it's dyed. It's kind of like a brownish gray and then this lighter gray. It is like a cloud. It's wonderfully soft. I've never knit with unspun before. My local yarn shop carries the Wool Dreamers Manchalope, so I've like felt it, but I've knit with it before. And I haven't used Plotalope before, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but it does feel very soft. And so when I got it and like took it out of its packaging, which came super fast by the way from Sweden to Edmonton, and I just like cuddled with it as I was like searching Ravelry for project ideas. But part of the problem is that I did not make a good plan before I purchased it about what I was actually going to make with it. And so I bought 2 different colorways because I was intending to make a colorwork sweater. And then for some reason decided, just kidding, I'm going to use this to make a Building Blocks pullover was my initial plan. And then for some reason changed my mind and decided I was going to do the cardigan version instead. And then was having a very tough time actually working with it because it is very delicate, and I had like wound it into balls because like a double-stranded ball. I'd heard that was easier to work with. And I knit up a very tiny swatch, which was good practice for like working with it. And I'm a loose knitter. I'm gonna just like show you at the end here, just like every single person does who uses this yarn, but like it's very delicate. And I think that whenever I do knit with it, I will be happy with it. But again, that particular time of December was not the time for me to be working on something that was tedious, and I couldn't get a good rhythm going. And then also I was worried I was going to run out. So one of the weird things about Nutiden is that you don't actually know what the yardage is. You just know what the weight is. The yardages always vary. And like, I very much rely on the numbers that a pattern gives me. One of the things about Amy Sher's patterns is that some of them are actually knit with Nutiden, and so in the pattern they have like a chart that has the like weight of Nutiden that's recommended based on what size you're making. So like that helped, but I was cutting it real close with what I had because I only had the one color, and so if I'm using both colors I will have enough for a colorwork sweater. If I was just trying to use the one sweater and make a bottom up sweater, I was gonna be cutting it close. So I worked on that for a little while, promptly set it aside. Okay, next project that I quickly started and then quickly stopped was the Pressed Flowers cardigan. And I had planned this knit for a while. I had ordered yarn. I had this, which is Fiber Natura Cobblestone, which I had seen at Stash Lounge like a year ago maybe, and was like, this is so cool, I've never seen this before. It's like barber pole yarn. It was a huge, like, this is how big the skein was, like it's like this big ball, and so I just bought one just for fun. And then later, as I was like deciding, like planning projects slash, I think that there was a sale at Stash, and so I was like, oh, I should get another one. This wasn't quite enough. I was thinking to maybe make like the shifty cardigan with it, and there wasn't gonna be quite enough for that. So I was like, I'll just buy another ball while they're having a sale. And then somewhere in the middle there decided, actually, you know what, I'm gonna make the Pressed Flowers cardigan. I kind of wanted to join the I Can Buy Myself Flowers KAL that Young Folk Knits was hosting, and bought my main color from Stash, which is this Barocco Lannis Light. I'd never used this before, but Woolen Cottonwoods here on Instagram, here on YouTube and on Instagram, but she used this for her Pressed Flowers cardigan, and I think Spin Cycle was her main color, and so she had good things to say about it. It's like woolly but not too scratchy. I was really, like, I bought it online, so I bought it sight unseen, and then it came, and then I really like it, and you'll see later that I've bought quite a bit more of it. But okay, so Stash was having a sale. I ordered this yarn, but I was like, this is a later project, I don't need it right now, I'm not going to pay for shipping. My brother works down the street from Stash, and so I'll just go get him to pick it up for me. He often goes to Stash and picks up yarn that my sister-in-law has ordered because she's also a very avid knitter. And so anyways, I just was like, told him basically, like, please go get my yarn. And so they were going to be coming up to Edmonton a couple weeks later. He was supposed to bring it and he forgot. So it didn't matter. It wasn't like an urgent yarn purchase that I needed. But then when we saw them at Christmas time, which actually was at New Year's, then he brought the yarn. And so while we were all like gathered together, I like cast on this project. I was like sitting there swatching and like made this like quick swatch, and then like immediately cast on this cardigan. I was so excited. And then knit like a little bit of it. If you are a big fan of the Pressed Flowers patterns, you will know that I did this wrong. Which I didn't actually even realize until I was posting about it on Instagram, being like, I don't like it. And then I was like, wait a second, I think those flowers are supposed to be in stockinette and not garter, which is true. I knit them in garter by accident, but I just was not liking, it was the texture in between the flowers that I wasn't enjoying. And it's not that I don't like it, but it wasn't, again, I think what I needed at the time. I was knitting for comfort, and it was not bringing me comfort. The like tactile experience of knitting is part of what I find like soothing. And so when it's not this like beautifully smooth stockinette fabric, it's this mosaic texture, it wasn't what I needed at the time. So anyways, I posted about it on Instagram. Actually, Megan from Wool and Cottonwoods messaged me and said, try it with like flowers in the with the proper pattern, and see if you like it better. And I think that I am going to do that. I didn't rip this out. I just like put it on hold, took my needles back. As I put it away, brought it back out a month later, and then I was like, oh, I do want this sweater. And so I don't really want to rip it out. I think I will see how it goes. I think I'm just going to like try and drop down and fix those flowers. We'll see. Might not be worth it. Maybe I should just rip back to the ribbing and knit it properly. I've only done mosaic knitting a couple of times, and I find the charts confusing. And I was just so excited to cast on. I think I wasn't really paying that much attention to what I was actually supposed to be doing. So anyways, here's another one that's like just chilling in here. So that was, I cast that on like December 30th. And within like the week, I had like changed my mind about it. And I just like, I had no knitting plans. Actually, that's a lie. I did have one plan that was coming up because I am doing the Do You Yoke mystery knit along with Zanetti Knits. And but the pattern was being released like at the start of January. So I knew that was coming. I had ordered yarn for that. I knew that there was something to come for me to work on, but I always have so many projects on the go, and I just was feeling lost. And so just to like feel something, you know, I like applied for a couple of test knits and finally felt like I had a goal, I think. One of which is my like major whip right now. So I will show that in a little bit. We went to Hawaii for a couple weeks in January, which was a very nice trip. It's very nice to get away. The first 2 weeks of January also felt kind of stressful getting ready for the trip. And also it's hard getting ready for a trip, and it's hard being on a trip when you're depressed. So that was interesting. But I had applied for this test knit, and so I knew I was going to bring that yarn along with me. I actually almost didn't bring any knitting with me for 2 weeks, which seems like, I can't believe that now. My mom was like, why? Like, you need your knitting. So I'm like so glad that she's like talked me out of that. So I brought like a lot with me then. That was the other alternative, is that I brought a ton of stuff with me. And so I knew I was going to have this blanket along with me. And then I brought a bunch of things to cast on as like whatever inspiration led. And I had already started, I guess by the time we were going, I had started that mystery knit along. And so I had that one packed along. And then I had made this plan to cast on the newsprint cowl by Pearl Soho. And so that is one of the like very first patterns that I ever found. Pearl Soho was like how I found that there was cool knitting patterns. And so on Pinterest, I had found them like back in the day. And I'm pretty sure that was like one of the first ones. There was that one, and like this one called the Arctic Shawl or something, or Arctic Wrap, which I still love the look of. So anyways, this newsprint cowl, I had planned for this knit anyways because I'd already bought yarn for it. I had bought so Frankie Gray Fiber released a Taylor Swift inspired, they've been doing Taylor Swift inspired colorways, and so of course I had to buy some. And so they like had restocked their whole collection, or they were doing a pre-order or something, I can't remember exactly, at the end of the year. And so I bought the Folklore colorway and then the charcoal just to like be the kind of contrast color with that. And I was going to make this newsprint cowl, and I thought that'd be cool, like it's like how the black and white kind of played off each other. And I actually almost bought the Reputation colorway because I liked that the album artwork for Reputation was like the news article things, and it was going to be this newsprint cowl. But I also, Folklore is like, has my heart, and so I wanted the Folklore colorway. They're quite similar, but anyways, it's like a little bit less speckle in it. So I cast on the newsprint cowl while we were on our trip. And so this is like, it's like a double wrap cowl, and I think it had like, I want to say like 330 stitches or something to cast on. I'd read through a lot of the projects and a lot of people were saying that it rolls quite a bit. It's just stockinette. It's reverse stockinette, but it's just stockinette. There wasn't ribbing or anything. And so a couple of people talking about different ways that they combated the rolling, and I looked up this technique about how to prevent stockinette from rolling. And so there's like this very particular cast on that you do, and then you like knit a couple rounds, and then you go back and like pick up a strand. Every other stitch you pick up a strand from your cast on edge and knit it together with the next stitch. And so I like had cast on this like 300 and some stitches very carefully in the round, and then like knit my couple rows, and then very carefully, like every other stitch, did this special technique, did all of that, knit a couple of my actual like rows. It's reverse stockinette with like how it ends up being. So I knit 3/4 of an inch, but 328 stitches around, and just like, I don't like this. I'm not happy with it. I'm bored of it. This is not fun. It's too many stitches. Like it just, there was not enough interest to it, just like swapping colors every 2 rows to keep me engaged with it at all. So I knit this much of it, ripped my yarn off, and like changed my plan. So that was silly. Whatever. It is what it is. I think it would have been, like from far away, I like the look of it. I think you like get the effect of like the newsprint thing, but I just could not be bothered. It's like, there's no way that I'm gonna knit, like, I don't know how many inches it was. But I found a different project that I wanted to use the yarn for instead, cast that on, and now that's another active whip. So, okay, and then one more thing that I had applied for 2 test knits. I got into both of them, and then the one of them, I think I ordered yarn to like test out while I was on my trip. I ordered a skein of John Arbin Yarnadelic from the Fiber Nook here in Edmonton, and was like, knew that it'd be waiting for me when I got home so I could swatch with it, test it out for this test knit, just like see if it was going to be the right yarn before I like ordered a whole big sweater's quantity of it, right, obviously, and knit this beautiful swatch. This is the color Badi Da, I think is what it was. And it's just, I've wanted to try this yarn for a long time because they're just, the color rates are so interesting. They have like such depth to them. I'm very excited to use this for something, but I decided not to proceed with the test knit. And so I sent an apologetic email to the designer. They were like super kind and understanding. It had like, the test knit had just started. It was too much in my brain to have that added on. And so I like had applied for these test knits just so I could feel something, like I said, the like thrill of a test knit. And then when it actually came down to it, it was like, okay, so part of it was like, I didn't get gauge. So, which I like could have just re-knit my gauge swatch, but I got stitch gauge, but I didn't get row gauge. And the pattern again very clearly states row gauge is important. That's what was being used for like grading the shoulders. The shoulder shaping was like an interesting construction on this sweater. And so I was like, okay, right now is not the time for me to like alter my knitting technique so that I can experiment with changing my row gauge while I'm actively working on another test knit that I also need to get gauge on, and also I'm halfway through a sweater that I'm trying to maintain gauge on and whatever. So anyways, I have this very lovely soft, it's so drapey, it's so soft, this Yarnadelic, and I will use it for something, but decided not to do that other test knit. So yeah, that was like my like very like untethered, uncertain whips like extravaganza that I've had for the last like 6 weeks. I feel much more settled now about what I'm working on. I had brought also some yarn along to Hawaii to make mittens that I never touched. I didn't ever cast that on. But I think otherwise I used everything I brought with me, which was good. I even knit a little bit on the plane. Not a good flyer. And I was worried about getting knitting needles going through security and stuff, but that was all fine. So I did on the way home, on our last flight from Vancouver to Edmonton, I knit a little bit on the plane. But at least I could say that I did it. But I knit a ton while we were in Hawaii. I was worried about, I don't like to knit when I'm sweaty. It's like when you're hot and your hands are sweaty and sticky, it's not fun. Like I didn't want to do that. But like also turns out our condo's air conditioned and we weren't outside every moment of the day. So we were actually inside the condo every evening in the air conditioning, and I got to knit every day. So I'm very glad that I brought my knitting along. It was a very nice addition to our vacation. And yeah. Okay, after all that, do you want to see what I'm actually working on now? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to show you the mystery knit along first. And so I had seen this come up from Zanetti Knits at the end of the year. I have said before, I'm like not the best candidate for a mystery knit. I'm like very controlling about, like very particular about things. I get FOMO about the like Stephen West mystery knit alongs, but I don't think I could ever do one. But with the sweater knit along, it's like I knew more what I was getting. I've never knit a pattern from this designer before, but I really like their aesthetic. And they had made a comment that it's a colorwork yoke and that it was going to be a geometric pattern versus the florals that they also do. And so they're kind of like, they kind of have both vibes. And so I was like, okay, like that's right up my alley. That's what I wanted. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out which yarn I wanted, and ended up ordering Durare Natura Albertine from the Knitting Loft on their Boxing Day sales. And I said that as though I've already talked about Boxing Day sales. I didn't. Yeah, doesn't matter. The stuff I bought from Stash was from before Boxing Day. I ordered a lot of yarn at Christmas to cope. So this was some of it. I had never used this yarn before. The pattern's written for sport weight, but it's a 28 stitch gauge, which is like much more like fingering weight to me. And so this yarn is fingering weight. It's 200 meters per 50 grams, and it's 90% merino, 10% silk, and it is beautiful. Like it has been so lovely to knit with. It's so nice for the color work. So here we go. I am just finished the color work for the body. I've got just like the plain bottom to knit, and I'm so happy with how it's turning out. It was fun to get the pattern in pieces. So they'd released like, you know, yarn information, gauge, sizing, all that kind of thing. So I knew what to order. And then about every week / every 2 weeks, they released a part of the pattern. And so the first week was you cast on at the start of the yoke, not at the neckband. And then it had the first like half of the color work chart or so. And then the next week was the rest of the color work to the split for sleeves and then the neckband. And then the next week was, is that right? The split for sleeves and the rest of the body. And then the last one was just released the other day, and it's for the arms. And so I was keeping up with it until this last one. Like I didn't finish the body enough so that I could then immediately start the sleeves when the pattern just was released. Like today I'm filming on a Friday. The pattern came out on Tuesday, I think, the last clue. But otherwise I like kept up with it really good. This is what I mostly worked on when I was in Hawaii. And I had gotten up to the point of splitting for sleeves before we left. And so that took some concentration then to like do the sleeve split. And I did that sitting very quietly with like my noise cancelling headphones on and figuring that out. But so yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. They had a Slack group to like show off your yarn and pictures and stuff, and good support there from people. So immediately people were like, oh, I see that the neckband isn't included in the first clue. Can you just let us know what it looks like? And they're like, no. Like, actually, I'd like to wait to like release that next week when that's like when the clue's supposed to come out. Because I think you know, that's not an uncommon technique for you to like cast on the yoke and then come back and pick up the neckband later. And that might be how lots of her patterns work. I'm not sure. Anyways, it's been very beautiful color work to knit. Something that also is very interesting is the center back is like where the beginning of round is, and how the color work is designed is that it's almost invisible. And so if you look closely, you can tell like where the jog is, but it's very smooth. And so like that was really cool. This has been lovely to knit. I had steam blocked it a little bit along the way before we left, and I think like doing the full wet block is just going to be so lovely on this. I started, just like the other day, started working on the body. My gauge switching from the color work to just like plain stockinette is off, and so I've only knit like 2 or 3 rounds, but I'm going to go back and like size down. There's quite a large like stretch between the end of these motifs. Oh, and I actually did change the motif a little bit at the bottom, which if you look at a picture, you'd be able to see that. But there's this very long stretch in between, right? And so I did ladder back jacquard. The last time I'd used that technique was on my Instant Crush pullover, and when I had picked up the little stitch to like make the do the technique of the ladder back jacquard, you could see there was like a hole in the fabric. And so I did something slightly different this time around, and it's a bit puckered. I'm just gonna show it upside down. It's a bit puckered because it's not been blocked, but it's very smooth. And so I'm very happy with that. So yeah, I need to just like zoom through the plain part of the body of this, and then do the sleeves. There, I saw now on the next clue, there's a little bit of color work around the cuff as well, so which I may or may not do, but it looks very beautiful. And the colorway in the sample is like very lovely, with the spin cycle, right, and the color changing and all of that. So anyways, I'm excited about this. I really like this yarn, and I'm looking forward to continue to work on that. Okay, my kids just came downstairs to remind me of some of my other finished objects that I worked on right before we left for our trip, and then also like during the trip is one of the other ones I worked on. And so they've requested little sweaters for their favorite stuffed animals. So my son wanted a sweater that matched his bunny, and so we like looked through my yarn stash and found some different colors that he liked. He wanted it to have little holes for bunny's feet and for it to be closed on the end to cover up his tail to keep him warm. And so we picked out these ones, and I made up a pattern, which I have not done in ages and used to kind of do with crochet because it's much easier to rip it out and change what you're doing. But yeah, there's Bunny's little sweater. And then Meerkat needed a sweater for my other son, and so we picked out yarn as well, and then I brought this along with us on our trip, and one of the days made a little outfit for Meerkat. So here we go. Okay, next project is the test knit that I'm doing for Bluebird Box. This is called Blanket for Lainey, and it's a very lovely center out blanket slash kind of wrap or a hap with color work and texture, and yes, it's very lovely. I had seen her like kind of teasing it a little bit, and then when I saw the test knit call come out, oh, I'd really like to make that. So yes, was very excited about that. Like I said, it kind of like got my knitting mojo back, and I knew that I would have what I needed in stash to make it. And so part of packing for our trip meant me down here in my knitting room pulling yarn for this project, and I like pulled a whole bunch of different options and just like double checking yardages and like comparing colors. It's 5 different colors. Yeah, and she'd like given a bit of guidance kind of about selecting colors and all that. And so I went back and forth about a few different things, settled on what I wanted to do, packed it along with us, cast on this project, like sitting on our lanai, looking out over the ocean, like it was so beautiful, and knit through most of the color work before I was like, I don't like my colors. So that was disappointing. And also my gauge was off. And so like I had gauge swatched, and one of the colors actually that I ended up using, I stole a ball of that Baroque Light from the Pressed Flowers cardigan. So at the time I was like, I'm not gonna knit it anyways, I'll just steal that. I'll break up that sweater's quantity. That's one of the like main colors. And so I'd like swatched with that, and it's like working away, and it's like then my gauge was off, and like yeah. And then I'm away from all of my yarn, and so I told Anna, I was like, okay, I'm not happy with my colors, I'm gonna reorder some yarn. We talked about a few different like color options, and I ordered yarn that would arrive while we were gone, that then when I got home I could promptly start it up again. So what I ended up doing was buying a whole bunch more colors of this Baroque Light from the stash again. This time just ordered it for delivery. So I will show you where I'm at now with this project. All my yarn is falling everywhere. It's a square. Kind of see it's just being pulled funny on the cords, but so you start with this like miter square in the middle, and then work out with the color work. And the second go around, I've just been zooming, and I'm much happier with my colors. I'm still like a little bit unsure about this gold, just because it's like feels a bit bright for me. And just with like how this gold and this like light blue blend together, I'm still not like 100% sold about it, but it kind of like feels a little bit retro to me, and I kind of like it. So I'm sticking with it. 4 of my colors are the Baroque Light, and then my last color is an alpaca yarn from Rosewood River Fiber Mill, which is local here in Alberta, and it's just 100% alpaca. It's very drapey and very beautiful. It's definitely more like a lace weight, but it's fine. And yes, it's very lovely. So this will be like the final border will be in this color. And yeah, so here we go. Now what's left, actually I'm about to do a row of baubles, which will take me forever because it's like, I don't know how many stitches I'm at now, but like it's getting big. But I think after that, it's just a lot of knitting. Like it's not hard, it's just a lot. You're increasing it like, I think probably every other round. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Every row gets longer and longer. But it's relaxing knitting. It's rhythmic. That's what I was needing. I find color work really rhythmic, and so I liked that about this mystery KAL, and then also just like the center panel for this one. I really like that like rhythm. But yeah, now it's just like flying around in circles. So yeah, I am looking forward to seeing like how this all comes together. Once I finished this last color work round, I pinned it out, steam blocked it, and that kind of like helped it like lay nicely in its shape. I could kind of see it a bit more, just like how it was all coming together. My gauge is better now, and yeah, there we go. You can see I've done 2 baubles. There's a lot of them, so that'll be my next step. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show was, so in the summer I sewed a pair of shorts before we went on a summer trip, and I really liked them. And for some reason, I've had 6 months to sew things for our Hawaii trip, and I just have not. But the week before we left, I was feeling motivated. So I sewed myself another pair of shorts, and they were great. I wore them all the time. Ooh, they are wrinkly. Okay, not showing them off at their best here, but they are like a linen blend fabric. So this is the chanterelle pattern by So Liberated, and I was really happy with them. I definitely think I will make like a full length pair of pants. I felt like I had the motivation to do it. I needed to roll with it, even though it was like 5 days before we left for our trip. was when I finished them, but I wore them all the time while we were there, so that was nice. And I just like had some fabric in stash, and yeah, use that. So technically another FO. I don't talk about sewing much on here because I don't do a lot of sewing, but every once in a while. The only other project I wanted to update on, because I worked on it a lot in December, is my Rowan cardigan. So this is a cabled cardigan by Megan Babin. I've been working on this since August, and so long-term whip. It's been a big project, and initially I had hoped to have it done by my daughter's birthday because her middle name is Rowan. And actually I had almost gotten to the point where I was like, I think I could actually do this. I'm remembering now what was going on also in December. I like blitzed through the back of this sweater and overdid it and was starting to hurt. Like my hands were getting sore. And so I had to like take a break from it. And so that was also factoring into like, didn't know what I was supposed to work on in December. Let me show you where I'm at with that. So we have 2 sleeves. One is blocked and one is not. Blocking it was so delightful. This is Briggs & Little Heritage. It blocked so, it's just like, it softened up so nicely. It bloomed. It's like drapier. The like cables really like settled into place. Like it was so satisfying to wash this, pin it out, like feel how the fabric felt. This is it unblocked, right? So obviously it's like rolling and it's like, it feels quite stiff. And so yeah, that was quite nice to see. And then here's the back. So this was obviously the biggest part of it. There's a huge cable motif up the front, or up the center back. And yes, I zoomed through the rest of this back in November and December. And so when I finished it, I think I had it in my head that if I worked really hard on it, maybe I could actually get it done by Beth's birthday. But it's still, I still need to do the 2 front pieces and then the whole like shawl collar. Like, okay, it's not happening. And then my hand started to hurt. I like needed to rein it in a bit. And so I put that idea aside. It's like I wasn't, if I had wanted to finish it by then, I would have had to do more work beforehand, and I was doing other things, so it's fine. I don't feel bad about that. But anyways, I want to show off my progress on it because it's been a while since I've showed it. So happy with how it's turning out. It's like weird seeing it all in pieces, I think, because it's hard to tell if it's like gonna fit. The sleeve for sure is too long. I thought that I would lose more length than I did when I blocked it out. And so I knit the first sleeve a little bit too long. Like I knit too long here before I started doing the sleeve cap shaping. But it's like pretty much the perfect length that I can just like roll up the cuff and then it fits great. So I didn't want to rip out the like top of the sleeve and take out a couple inches. So I think it'll be fine. And then in the start of February, or sorry, at the start of January, when I was waiting for yarn to arrive from my Boxing Day purchases that I needed for the mystery knit along, whatever, I cast on the front. The first thing you're supposed to knit that says to knit in the pattern is the pocket lining. And I'm using a different gauge than the pattern. And so when I first started the pattern and knit this little pocket lining, it was like, this is huge. It was like this big. And I was like, this can't be right. And so I like abandoned that, started on the sleeve. And then now when I got to the front panel and I knit to here, and then I was like, okay, now I have to knit the pocket lining. But then I had a much better idea of like what gauge I needed, all of that. And it's this, I've done a pocket like this once before on the Spark cardigan. No, Spice. On the Spice cardigan by Andrew Mary. but this is a different method of doing it, of like adding the pocket in. And so I've just gotten to the point where I have attached the lining on the back, and I need to knit now for however many inches before I start the shaping on the front. And this feels like it's going way faster than the back because obviously it's much less knitting. Do not have that very large panel up the middle. The cables, I check the chart every single row. Like I don't understand how people can knit cables without checking their charts. I was just watching the Finished Knitting Stories podcast the other day, and she's knitting the Ursus sweater and said, it's like, oh, I haven't been looking at my charts since like the beginning of it. It's like, what? There's so many different cable patterns to keep track. There's no way I could do it. I don't mind. I have my like Knit Companion chart tracker going. It's fine. I don't mind checking every line of the chart that I need to do. But I don't have to think about the cables that I'm doing now because I've done it 1 bazillion times. So this is coming along nicely. I think it's going to be just like the epitome of cozy when it's done. And like I said, it's just like it blocked so nicely. And yeah, I'm really excited to have this done. I don't know when it'll be. I'll probably include a few like pictures and stuff from our trip. We had gone to this exact same, we went to Maui, we went to this exact same condo right before the pandemic hit with my family. And yeah, then I haven't traveled since. And so we went back to the exact same place, been there before. We like went into it knowing we were not going to be like going and seeing and doing like up to do the sunrise on the volcano and like all these things. We had beautiful beach access. There's great pool there. Seeing the kids go from like being very afraid of the water to like just having so much fun was, yes, just brought a lot of joy. And it just was really relaxing. I read a lot. I'm not a big reader, but I like impulse bought myself a Kindle I think on Black Friday, and knowing that I like had this trip coming up, I was like, I'm gonna be a reader now. And I actually like read quite a bit, and so that was fun. I don't know how people read and knit at the same time. That has not been something that I have attempted, but maybe in the future that'll be a thing I can do. I listen to audiobooks, and so like if I'm reading, that's usually what I'm doing, is I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm knitting. But it was really nice to just like be at the pool, reading a book. Yeah, we had like very beautiful weather, and like I said, it's weird being on vacation when you're depressed, but like yeah, we'd gone into it knowing it's like if my parents were with us as well. And so we had 4 adults and 2 children. It was fine if I needed to go lay down. But it took my brain a little bit of like, it took me a while to give myself that permission, I think, of just like actually let it be okay. And for me to like rest the way that I needed to. Lots of whales, like it's just such a like unique joy to be able to like sit and drink your coffee and see whales breaching. Like it's incredible. So obviously far away, and like sometimes like with our binoculars, or like my husband's zoom on his phone is like goes to like 100, and so he like I'll include a couple of those pictures. He got a couple like kind of blurry pictures of whales, which is so cool. They're just like fascinating to me. So that was really lovely. And for the most part, traveling and stuff was fine. It was a red eye coming home, and I just like barely slept, so like that was weird. And a bit of a like coming home. So we flew from Maui to Vancouver, and then Vancouver to Edmonton. And when we got onto the plane in Vancouver, somebody was sitting in my seat with like a very small baby. And so my husband was sitting with the kids, and then I was supposed to be sitting across from them in the aisle. And so she was sitting with her friend, and like had just like missed, that was like, she was supposed to be in that row for her other flight, and like she kind of misunderstood, and oh, she was actually like in row whatever, like the very last row of the airplane. And so we like sorted it out, and I was like, you know what, like I'll just go take your seat in the back. Like I don't want, like you have a very small baby, I don't want to like I don't want to separate you from your friend. And so I went and sat at the very back of the plane. And so this was like hour 12 of No, was it that much? I think it was hour 10 of like travel after a long day beforehand, when you like have to be out of your condo by 10, and then you have, you know, our flight didn't leave till 11:45 p.m. and then I hadn't slept. I was feeling emotional. And so got to her seat and then at the back of the plane and asked the flight attendant, like told her what was up and said like, if there, you know, is there any other seats, like empty seats, you know, further up in the plane? And she's like, no, like we're completely booked. But she like chit-chatted with one of the other flight attendants, and like the very last row on the other side of the aisle, they had reserved for flight attendants. Like if there's turbulence, they needed to be seated. And then there was, I think, a pilot who would come to like just catch the flight kind of thing. And so she's like, if you want to, though, you can sit in that window seat. And so like from the time I sat down in that chair, talked with her, she went and talked to her co-worker, I had started crying. And so she comes over to tell me like, okay, like actually if you want to sit in that window seat, then you can. I was like, okay, thank you. Like scurried over to this window seat and just cried. Like there was not like a rhyme or reason to it. I just was sad that I wasn't next to my family. I was sad that there was a baby, and I was feeling then self-conscious, and I was like crying on an airplane. Not my first time crying on an airplane, but I managed to like keep it to myself out the window. Not like whatever, I didn't need to do that, but I was feeling embarrassed that they would think that I was like making a big fuss about having to move seats. Like that wasn't what it was. It just was this whole other complication about like this beautiful little baby. And at the end of a long day when I was exhausted. So anyways, but that was also the flight that I did a little bit of knitting. I also frantically managed to download half of Miss Americana before the flight took off, and so I watched that for the flight. It's a quick flight from Vancouver. I did a bit of knitting and all was fine. And yeah, so that was the end of the trip. The next night I proceeded to sleep for like 14 hours at home, and that was needed. So anyways, okay, that was stories from our trip. Also feels complicated to like, oh, it's like, it was such a long flight coming home from Hawaii. Like, oh my gosh, it was like so stressful being on vacation when I'm depressed. When I don't feel like you're allowed to like, all you're allowed to say about going on a beautiful tropical vacation is like how wonderful it was. But turns out life is more complicated than that. Going on vacation, going on a family vacation without one of your children is complicated. And that's okay. I feel like I'm being a brat by having anything that was like, this was hard. My trip to Hawaii was hard. But I hope that there's also space for that about, it's like, okay, going on vacation does not cure your stress at work, stress at home, stress in life. It like gives you hopefully a bit of a reprieve from it. But it's not like it magically cured my depression. So the sun was very good for my soul, and the relaxation was very good for my soul. So all of that was good. There were just also things alongside it that were hard, and that's okay. So, all right. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully some more like focused knitting here now. I feel much more settled about my projects and excited about them, motivated about them. So that's good. And yeah, I'll give you an update here in, well, who knows, a couple weeks, a month, a couple months. We'll see. Okay, you can find me on Instagram as @paper.knits and on Ravelry as thisispaperknits. Please like and subscribe here if you want to see more of my videos. I always love reading people's comments. I try to reply to everybody's comments, so feel free to do that. And yeah, I'll catch you next time. Happy knitting.